Welcome back, everyone. So today, this video is about the first part of the interview with Melanie Gibbs. Who is Melanie Gibb? Melanie Gibb was the best friend of Lori Vallow, at least for a couple year period there. And she was also someone who was pretty involved in the early part of Lori and Chad's teachings and their group. I use that in quotes because that is exactly how she describes it. Not a cult, not a church, not anything other than a group. And she tries to do everything to sidestep the actual um, definition of what they were. Now, she says that in this interview, we'll learn in her own words that were just a bunch of friends who gathered every so often to talk about religion. And every day for at least a couple month period there, Lori was in direct contact with her. And if she would take a side, a step back and look at the actual situation, she would realize exactly what Lori was doing. Lori was trying to indoctrinate her into their group. So there are parts of this video where I'm going to make pauses in the video to give clarification on what she had to say. Because some of the parts she smiles and does everything she can to sidestep certain issues, things that have been documented that we already know here in the public, and obviously East Idaho News, the reporter there, knew about him as well, but he didn't press her on issues. He wanted her to just talk and have her, give her the ability to be able to say what she wanted to say. So let's jump into it and understand this is the first part of the interview. The next part will follow in a couple of days. So enjoy.
I know.
Would it be fair to say that you've been in hiding?
Yes.
Why?
When you realize that the people that you know and you're close to and love have been involved in something that has to do with kidnapping and people dying, you start to think, oh my gosh, are they going to come after me? Like, everything closes in, and you start to think about your own safety, and you start to think about what really happened, and could this really be true? I had all kinds of fears, what the media would say about me, if they would say it the way I want to say it, like I'm saying it now. I wasn't ready.
So why are you ready today?
Because I faced all the fears, and then I decided that the truth was more important than what I wanted. And I needed to do it for those that have passed on, that justice may be served. I think it's fair to Charles and JJ and Tammy and Tylee that someone is standing up for what happened to them. And I do care for them, and I care for the families that are involved.
And is that your goal in talking today?
My goal is to speak to the things that have gone on, and also to speak to many that believe their story of some of the things we're going to talk about zombies, to being part of the 144,000, to multiple probations. These things do need to be discussed to those that do follow those teachings. And so I have a lot of perspective on that.
Would it be fair to say you know Chad and Lori better than anybody?
Probably.
And you know their beliefs.
Yeah.
You know their activities. You know more about this story probably than anybody else other than them.
Yeah, I think so.
You told me the other day on the phone that someone told you needed to get an attorney. And what was your response when they said, have you gotten an attorney?
Well, how I responded to you is, why do I need an attorney if I'm telling the truth? God is on my side.
So let's go back a few years and talk about Chad Daybell.
Okay.
How did you meet Chad?
The first time I met him, he was at a conference or an event speaking about his last days, dreams and visions, and I just walked up to him and introduced myself to him.
Was that in Rexburg?
I think the first time I met him might have been at a camp up in Ogden, I think. Somewhere in that area.
In northern Utah?
Northern Utah.
Were you impressed by what he had said there at the conference? Is that why you wanted to talk to him, or was it just a casual, good job?
I wanted to meet him because I thought his dreams were interesting, and when I met him, I thought he was a really nice guy, and anytime I saw him was at an event.
At what point did you become closer than just seeing him at events or, hearing him speak?
So when Lori and him met, that's when I started to get to know him a little bit more.
Tell me how you met Lori.
So I was teaching a class at church one evening, and she was there, and she introduced herself to me.
And what was that encounter like?
She was very excited to hear the things I was teaching, and so when I went out to the hallway, she came up to me and introduced herself, and she told me about a lot of personal experiences that she had that were spiritual in nature, and we just hit it off.
So from there, a friendship developed.
Yeah.
And what was that relationship like?
Wow.
In the beginning,
yeah.
What was it like?
So we talked often about our experiences that we had spiritually, and we talked about some of our trials that we've overcome, and we talked a lot about the second coming as well, and how excited we are for the things that we've been studying and learning, and so just a lot of interest in that area. Mm-hmm. And we just talked about life and being a mom, and JJ being a handful, being autistic, and what that was like, and we just talked about our life.
Do you remember what year that was, Melanie, when you met her?
Yeah, that was 2018, about October.
October of 2018. Mm-hmm. So you saw JJ, you saw Tylee, you knew that
Absolutely.
She was raising the kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at what point did she meet Chad? Because you knew Chad and you knew Lori, but they were separate relationships.
Correct. So I met her first. Well, I met him, within years, but didn't know him super close or anything like that. So then I meet her, and then her and I decided that we're going to go to an event in St. George, and so we drove down together, and then he was selling his books and speaking, and so that's when they got to meet. So that was probably October, November, somewhere in that time frame of the same year. 2018.
Mm-hmm. So did you introduce them?
I don't know if I did or she just went up to the table. I can't recall.
And was there anything unusual or magical or different about when they met?
So we were there for 2 or 3 days, and I think he was there for 2 days, and she talked to him a lot about his books, and so she asked a lot of questions, and she was very interested in what he thought, and she was interested in what she knew, and so they just started talking about these different beliefs that generally are not something you learn in church. And so they started to kind of develop that connection right there. Mm-hmm.
And were you kind of intergrained with all of it right there as they're talking about these things?
I am going in and out, and I'm not sure exactly all the things they're saying.
I see.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything unusual. It would be if you found somebody at the church that had similar beliefs and you were talking about things, or was it a step further?
It was a step further. It was discussing the things that were not something you would talk at church. It was something that you would talk closely with not a lot of people listening.
Did you know that Chad had a wife and 5 kids in Rexburg?
Mm-hmm.
And did Lori know that?
Yes.
And was Tammy ever with Chad?
No.
She didn't come with him to the events?
No.
And did his children?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So where did their relationship go from there?
So, after spending much time talking those 2 days, we went back to Arizona, and he came down to Arizona when it was the next event, which was in November sometime. And so many people, so some of my friends, some of Lori's friends, and then Chad, all got to stay in her house. It was one of the larger houses she had, so she had plenty of room throughout her house, and so they spent some time talking, and he spent some time talking to us as well.
Everybody stayed in this house.
Yeah, that's right.
Chad, Lori, you. Was Charles there?
No, he went out of town.
He was out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have much interaction with Charles?
A little bit.
And what was that like?
So when I did interact, it was just like the first time I came over, I believe we did a barbecue, and he was cooking barbecue. That seemed that something that he was good at, according to both of them. And there was swimming in the pool with the kids, and he seemed like just kind of a nice guy, just happy to see us, happy to meet us. I don't know. It was an enjoyable conversation. He was talking a little bit about his conversion to the church, and he seemed to be pretty excited about it.
How would you describe his and Lori's marriage?
There seemed to be some arguing often when I would see them together. So he was trying to do things to help her and please her, and she seemed like she was struggling to be happy by that. Like she seemed a little often frustrated with him. They had something going on that I didn't quite understand, but there seemed to be a lot of contention between the two of them.
Did you ever see him lose his temper or become irate or angry with Lori or the kids?
No.
Did you ever see her become upset or angry with Charles?
Like vocally, I could see her, being upset, and he was frustrated back. So he might have had a little bit of that stress in his voice when you argue. So I would say just that arguing kind of a upset voice,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't there at the house the day that you guys were all there for that conference.
Right.
The conference happens, and what happens from there with Chad and Lori?
They just spent time talking about things. They went on a walk together, or jog in the morning together. I do recall that. All the things they talked about, it's like so personal. It's so hard to share with the world. You know what I mean?
So it was very personal details.
Some of it, he was teaching us about some of his understandings about multiple lives and things of that nature. But at that point, he had already shared with her when they met in St. George that they had been married multiple times before. So that was established when they first met.
Chad told Lori when they first met that they had been married before?
Not in this, right now in this earth life, but in multiple earth lives.
In a previous life.
Mm-hmm.
And did Lori have an issue with that?
No, she seemed to understand that teaching already, that she had learned already through podcasts. So it wasn't something that was
foreign,
right?
So Chad's teaching this group about multiple lives. Is that what it means? Multiple probations? Does that mean previous life?
That's right.
So he's talking about multiple probations. He and Lori have been married before.
That's right.
And you all are discussing this. And is that when you decided to form a group? Is that?
No, there wasn't any group. It was just him talking to people individually. He wasn't even trying to express it like, hey, let's start a group. Nothing of that language. So, a lot of people have different ideas about, is this a cult, is this not a cult? And so we can talk about that a little bit later. But I would just say from the beginning, what it felt like to me at least, is he was just talking to individuals. And he was very kind of private, and so he would talk to her, and then she would kind of share with us. So he wouldn't get too overly involved talking to us. She would just more share what he would teach her to us.
And was she the only person that he was doing this with?
No.
There were others?
Mm-hmm.
Other women?
Men and women. I knew of it already, yeah.
And do you know, had he told other women that he had been married to them in previous probations?
I'm not sure about that.
But definitely he had told Lori that.
Right.
What was it like to witness this? I mean, did it seem like a normal relationship between the two of them, or did you...
Quickly, I just want to add a little something there to give you a little bit more clarification upon what she's actually talking about. When Chad tells Lori that they have been married in multiple lives prior to the ones they're living now here on Earth, this is the same type of indoctrination that David Koresh used with the Branch Davidian Church. This is how he set up his group, cult, whatever you want to call it, church, gathering, followers, whatever word you want to use there to describe them. But that's how David Koresh started it, and everybody started following along with what he had to teach them, because he was seen as the individual who had the knowledge. And he told the women of the Branch Davidians, that they were being selectively given this information. You can, it's easier to convince one person that they are special, that they are given this information, and that it's only for them to know, instead of trying to teach an entire group of people where they may question them, well, what did he say to you? What did he say to you? I mean, I guess we're all the same. It's harder to do that than it is to teach someone something special and make them feel special. This is exactly what Chad was doing. The same thing. It's textbook on how, if you want to start your own group like this, it's the first thing you do is you find some people and you get that core group together and you make them feel absolutely special. Individualize your message through each and every single one of the person in that core group. And then they go out and they talk to the next person like the spoke of a wheel. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you get enough people together to lead the thing into the next momentum. That's what was happening here, ladies and gentlemen. So back to the video.
You think this might be going a little too far?
It was definitely different. The idea was definitely a new concept. I'm a very open person, so I don't necessarily think it's not true. And before I just listened to what they said. Did I 100% believe any of it ever? No, not 100%, no. So when you get introduced to something, you kind of just, let it marinate. And so I just listened to them talk about it. I mean, it was not something that I knew anything about until they shared it with me, so.
And not something that you had heard at church or in Sunday school or in a manual anywhere?
Never. Yeah, it does not represent our church's teachings at all.
So they're going on jogs together. He's talking about these multiple probations. The conference ends, and what happens from there?
So he goes back home, and I just know that they're communicating on the phone every single day. I do know that. She would let me know. Yeah. Did
you ever think, she might be falling in love with him?
Yeah, I knew. They pretty much hit it off.
Did you wonder, hold on, she's married and he's married too, and they both have kids? Was that a thought you ever expressed to Lori?
Well, I did actually offer the idea. I'm like, why don't you just go ahead and get a divorce? And they were told that they weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to?
Yeah.
Because of church teachings, or?
No, something that they received through the other side of the veil, how they would speak about it, and said, no, we're not allowed to do that. So
they received like a spiritual prompting or a revelation, or
however he got his revelation.
However he got it. Yeah. Said, don't get a divorce.
Right, he wasn't allowed to, actually.
Was not allowed to get a divorce.
That's correct.
You said that it wasn't a group or a cult, but do you think it became that over time?
I guess it depends on what you believe those words mean. A lot of us don't understand what those words mean. I would say it's teachings, that you have the basic tenets of the gospel of Jesus Christ that we do as Christians, right? And then you have this doctrine that comes in that's not affiliated with any Christianity that I've ever read of. And it's not doctrine that comes from Jesus Christ. It comes from the adversary. And so that comes in, and it's enticing, because how many people do you hear even in the world that want to know about their future, right? Or they want to know their fortune or something like that. And so it's enticing, so you keep going more and more into it, and then you get to more information, and it gets you to ask questions that you shouldn't be asking. And then you learn these kind of things. And so you can call that what you want. I mean, I didn't see him forming any groups per se. Preparing people is not a cult. They're people, very nice people, that have an event they hold, and they have different speakers. He just happened to be one of them, and they had no no idea that he had these belief systems, nor did he know anything, nor did they know anything about Chad and Lori's relationship. They had no idea.
Yeah, so that was going on separate from the mainstream church and preparing of people. It was this little thing.
Yeah.
Would you say that you got sucked into it?
Yeah.
Or brainwashed?
I don't know if the brainwash word is, I would say sucked into it. I don't know if you would call it a brainwash or not.
How often would you meet? Would you actually meet together? Or was this more done on the phone or on email or Facebook?
It wasn't anything that was planned. So I just spent a lot of time with Lori. So we spent every day together for a period of time, actually, especially when she left Charles that first time. It seemed like it was every day. It was close to every day. A lot of time together for at least a few months, and then it kind of spread out a little bit. I talked to her a lot personally because she was with me a lot. And he talked to her, but I didn't talk to him very often, just occasionally.
So he called her, and because you were with her so much, you knew what they were talking about.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
How did you meet Alex and Zulema and Melanie?
I met Alex for the first time at Lori's house. He often came over to visit. And I think Melanie, too. I met her at her house, and then Zulema I met at church.
Okay, so Melanie and Alex would come to the house while you were there with Lori, and what was that interaction like? What was that relationship like?
It was kind of fun and enjoyable. Alex was fun, and he was a comedian kind of guy, and we just talk about all kinds of stuff, sometimes spiritual stuff, sometimes non-spiritual stuff. It was, in the beginning, it was just more casual. Because, Alex at this point didn't know anything about that until later on.
Would you say that Chad and Lori were kind of leaders, or at least they were working their way to be leaders of a group, of you, of other people that might follow their teachings?
So ultimately, yes. They did believe that they were the head of the 144,000. So, that's scriptural. That word is scriptural, right? But they believed that was what their assignment was. So I guess in some sense you could say that they were trying to find people that would fit that group individually.
And all along they're going to church every Sunday.
To a point, and then she just stopped going after a while, after she felt that Charles was kind of chasing her with the papers to be signed for divorce. She kept running, and so I don't think she went to church. So she hadn't gone to church in a long time, and if she did go, it was very rare.
But you were going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about burner phones? 60 burner phones being used to communicate, or
I don't know that word, burner.
It's like a prepaid phone that you can go down to 7-Eleven and buy a phone and put 400 minutes on it, and then once it's done, you can get another one. It's not like you have a cell phone plan or anything. Did Laura use a lot of those type of devices?
Well, I know that she had about 3 phones, but they seem to be the same phones. So if she did those and threw them away, I don't know about that.
But she had 3 phones and was getting calls on all of them.
Yeah, it was hard to track her at times. You didn't know which phone she was going to pick up.
Why did she?
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So I just wanted to make a clarification here and kind of interrupt and kind of space this out a little bit. So if you want to pause it and take a break, get a cup of coffee, whatever, we got at least another 9 to 10 minutes of the video to go. Wanted to talk about the cell phones for a minute here and the burner phone aspect of it that he brought up. We know that Lori had at least, in her own use, she had at least 4 cell phones. She had the phone that was on the cell phone plan with Charles. She had the cell phone that she only communicated with Chad with, and nobody else. It was just her and Chad talking on that one phone. Then she had a phone that she used as a secondary device to communicate with Charles's children who were away at college. And she also, and that's the one that she used to actually text them and tell them that their father was dead. That was a completely separate number from the other ones. And we also know that from the moment that she disappeared, that Tylee disappeared, she had Tylee's cell phone on her in Hawaii, along with JJ and Tylee's birth certificates were with her in her purse in Hawaii, and Tylee's cell phone. So we know she had those 4, the separate numbers. Did she have more burner phones than that? We don't know. But I just want to make a clarification of that we know she had at least 4 separate phones on her at some given point.
Living certain standards. And you're saying Chad and Lori clearly were not living those standards, or at least following the doctrines being taught.
Correct.
But they were still going to the temple.
Oh yeah, that was her favorite place to go. So she did actually go to the temple, but maybe not to church.
She'd go to the temple, but not to church.
Yeah.
So did you know that their teachings weren't in line with the mainstream?
Yeah.
And did you talk with her about it?
Yeah.
And what was the reaction?
Well, when she taught me, she was leading me to believe they were true. So I didn't. There would be times where I'm like, do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think this is, those kind of thoughts? But I just kind of didn't voice a much opposition to it, but just more listened, just more listened.
Was there ever a time where you thought, whoa, this is too much? This crosses the line?
Well, I always thought this is a little unusual, especially, we'll get in talking about later about the zombie thing, but that was definitely unusual. That was hard to completely believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite unusual.
Did you feel, or did they make you feel special or chosen as they're teaching you these things, that you are one of the elect and you need to be with us?
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
First I thought it was me, right? So first you have that feeling of, I don't feel like that's something, because I didn't get that personally from God, so I thought it was unusual. So she kind of had to keep talking me into it. That makes sense. Like, you really are, you need to believe this, and with much enthusiasm.
How did Lori describe your relationship with her?
I would say she would call me a best friend or either a really good friend.
And you all knew each other in previous lives?
Well, she claimed that we did, but I have no memory of that.
They obviously made you feel very special, made you feel like you were elect, that you were chosen. And as things progressed, did you gradually come to really believe that and say, yeah, I am one of the chosen ones?
To some level. Not 100%, but to some level.
Were their beliefs and this belief system written down or recorded in any way?
Yeah. There was paperwork that showed all the 12 apostles to the Old Testament apostles, prophets, people and their the friends that they knew currently, to maybe some movie stars or people, just in general. They had like maybe 4 pages. I don't know how many pages. And that was created by Chad. And he would say, well, these are who they are. This is what lives they live. This is how many times they've been on. So yes, it was a whole document. It was a whole plan. I mean, they would write down on paper, like, this is how many lives. This is what it needs to get to this level. You need to go to this many. I mean, it was quite the plan, if that makes sense. It was quite the detailed list. I mean, it was, and I know that Charles was aware of it because he sent it out to a lot of people.
So Chad came up with all of this on his own?
That I know of. I don't know if he got it from anywhere else. I've never heard that before.
And movie stars were on it?
I think so, or either he told us personally. I didn't look at the whole list, so I can't say. I just kind of browsed it a little bit because I didn't feel like it was for me to look at.
Yeah.
So I kind of skimmed it a little bit, so...
Can you tell me about Chad and Lori sealing themselves in the temple to each other? And for those people that aren't familiar, couples will go to the temple and be married and sealed together, meaning they believe that the relationship will continue after this life ends. Did Chad and Lori talk about what they were doing in the temple together, which would be against church policy and procedure?
Right. Chad didn't tell me, but Lori did.
What did she tell you?
And she just told me they went together and they felt that they were sealed by those on the other side of the veil that had the authority to do that.
So they were in the temple together
Right.
when this happened.
Right.
Yet she's
That's
still
right.
married to Charles and he's still married to Tammy.
Correct.
And when you would raise this with them, that, hey, you're still married, what was their reaction, or at least Lori's, because I'm sure you never had a chance to talk to Chad
Right.
about it.
She said that it was okay that they did this because they had been married so many times before that their spouses would understand someday.
Lori, from what I understand, said that she has been on 21 planets and Chad has been on 31. Have you heard that before?
I wouldn't say planets, but I would just say lives.
Lives.
Mhm.
So she's had 21 lives and he's had 31. That he was a Holy Ghost and has had 5 lives on this earth and she's had 4 lives.
Correct.
And
Well, no, I think she had 5 lives on this earth.
she had 5 lives on this. They both had 5 lives on this earth.
I believe so.
And Chad made a portal in Lori's closet so she can visit him. What does that mean? That sounds kind of crazy, I'll be honest.
It does sound crazy. So a portal is something that he created for her. I don't know exactly how he did it, but maybe.
Like a box?
No, it's just a spot where he just maybe said a prayer or, however words he uses to create this portal. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know.
Sure.
But it's not like he could come through it physically, but it was a way for them to interact spiritually.
I see.
Yeah.
So it was a sacred area where if she wanted to connect with him, she could go sit and then they would have a connection. What do you think about that?
I thought it was different. I thought, how do you do that? Like, do you have to have some special skills to do that? I didn't understand how people could do that, but I don't know. It was pretty extreme, but to me, everything was new, and I just thought, well, these people know things that I don't know about this stuff, so.
It seems to me, though, that all along you were kind of at the back of your mind questioning, not blindly believing everything they said, but somewhat skeptical. Would that be an accurate?
Yeah. I mean, if you were to talk to Lori, she'd probably say I believed it. But there's always a little bit of doubt because I know she also had doubt. And she on occasion 2 or 3 times said to me, if Chad is Satan, he sure is a good one. So that tends to lead me to think that she wasn't 100% convinced either.
That she may have doubted Chad too.
Yeah.
And she said, if Chad is a Satan, he sure is a good one.
Yeah.
Do you know, did she ever tell him that?
Not that I know of.
Or raise questions with him that
I don't know.
you don't know? You talked a little bit about Alex. What was he like with Zulema? Did you have much interaction with the two of them?
Just a little bit at the end, because they didn't know it. Well, they didn't get together until the very end, so they were just developing a friendship.
And you met Zulema at church.
Correct.
Okay. And what was Melanie Boudreau like?
She was. She's fun. I really love Melanie. We did have a special relationship. She loved me and I loved her, and so she seemed that she had a lot of strife going on in her life, and she was really worried about her family, and so we had conversations about what was going on to some level. I mean, I wasn't as involved with their conversations as Lori and Melanie were, but as far as I went, we just were a support of, to each other, I think.
Would it be fair to say that you, Chad, Lori, Melanie, Alex, Zulema, you 6 were kind of a close group of friends, kind of a tight-knit family in a way?
Yes.
So you all would spend a lot of time together, and during these meetups, over dinner or whatever, you talk about religious things, the mysteries of God, things like that?
Sometimes we didn't meet together as a group like a close friendship group together very often. We met on a very rare occasion together, all of us. We more like saw each other here or there, or talked on the phone, or took a drive here together. But that kind of, like you would a friend. You don't always get together as a group, but yeah.
And was it always religious talk?
Pretty much, I would say so.
Not a lot of other talk about politics or the weather.
No, politics.
Sports.
Probably not politics and sports. No, I wouldn't even talk about that.
Sure, yeah. Gardening, whatever.
I would talk about gardening.
So it was mainly religious talk when you'd all get together.